Good afternoon. As we approach the final section of today's showcase, it really is a moment to bring things together and to remind ourselves what we're about. And it is fostering competitiveness, vitality, and prosperity in rural Eastern Ontario. And this closing panel addresses exactly that. It's discussing building a new generation of entrepreneurs in rural Eastern Ontario. What does it take? What does it look like? What are the challenges? And we put together a panel that brings together a diverse set of backgrounds and experiences. Right beside me we have Dan Borowec, Director of the Northumberland County Economic Development and Tourism, and I will be asking Dan to start the panel. He speaks as an economic developer and a very, very creative individual who's worked tirelessly in this region for quite a while to foster entrepreneurship. After that, we'll have David Fell in the middle speak to some of the challenges involved in entrepreneurship, because there is, in many cases, limited broadband connectivity, and he will be discussing EORN, the Eastern Ontario Regional Network, and all that's being done currently to roll out broadband in Eastern Ontario. Right to David's right is David Hatch. His wife Stacey is ill today. David and Stacey own Whistlestop Productions Limited, and I know many of you are very familiar with this award-winning organization. They're doing amazing things. You'll be hearing more about creativity in the township and in rural Eastern Ontario when we do have broadband. Then, at the very far right, Dr. Packalen, who teaches and studies entrepreneurship at Queen's School of Business, will be providing her perspective about rural entrepreneurship and how to build a new generation of entrepreneurs. And we'll close the panel with Darcelle Runciman, who's the enterprise facilitator in Hastings County. And I know that, as you heard earlier, we have other enterprise facilitators present. Some of you have not become familiar with the Ciroli program, and you're going to hear some exciting stuff about how to get individuals connected with mentors and to grow small businesses using a community. It's exciting. So what I hope to do and hope to have you see today is a blend of perspectives, and then we will entertain your comments and your questions. With no further ado, Dan Borowec.
Thank you, Yolande, and good afternoon, everyone. Excuse me. You know, in terms of building a new generation of entrepreneurs, one of the approaches we took was to try and do something that was uniquely strategic. The first thing we did was take a look at what we have. And in a Northumberland context, we benefit from a multitude of program supports. You know, we have a very aggressive business advisory center, which is managed to attract a sizable core of volunteers who on a regular basis provide immeasurable knowledge and direction to new business startups. We have a very, very progressive CFDC that is a strong supporter of new and existing small businesses and provides the necessary capital and advice for startup. Northumberland consists of 7 municipalities and the Alderville First Nation. 5 of the municipalities have economic development officers who provide their resources, as well as Alderville First Nation, which has its own economic development officer. So as you can see, as we roll on through, if we're looking to try and do something to build a new generation of entrepreneurs, our take on it was from the perspective that if we have all this resource, and in addition to those resources, we also have our own vast network of excuse me, support through organizations like our local training board, the Workforce Development Board, which has just completed an integrated local labor market plan, which gives some insights into the type of labor that will be required. And add to that a online community employment resource partnership, which allows new businesses to seek employees online free of charge. So there's a vast array of support systems. taken that sort of core of support systems, we layer on top of that technology. You know, we've just completed a county-wide investment of approximately $3 million to create high-speed accessibility, and at this point in time, we're probably at about 87% access to that high speed. And in order to support that type of technology, we as a county have invested in certain software applications, in particular an online reservation system, which would support the local tourism industry and as a result potentially create more jobs within that industry. And it's interesting to note that as technology has advanced, the cost of particular uses of software, and in this one in particular, becomes a real benefit to small business operators. In fact, for 80 cents a day, small business tourism operators now have an online presence. So what's that have to do, I guess, with trying to support a new generation of entrepreneurs? Well, if you have all that in place, then what else can you do that might maybe actually create some sort of framework for new entrepreneurs to work within? And the approach that we've taken on this, and this is a pilot that we've engaged in, is to do a regional local food business retention and expansion project. And were the lighting better, you would probably see that behind me, Eastern Ontario's disappeared. But we are doing a regional project that extends itself from Kawartha Lakes, Peterborough, Northumberland, Quinte West, Belleville, Prince Edward, Lennox Addington, Hastings, and Frontenac. And within that scope, what we're attempting to do is to assess businesses that produce or promote local food from local farms, and in turn ask them to participate in this local food business retention and expansion survey. Now this, a BR&E survey of this nature is done in conjunction with the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. These surveys identify the strengths and challenges faced by participating businesses. As well, these surveys are typically used to develop economic strategies to help industries thrive and are proven to be successful in Ontario. And in general terms, usually a BR&E is conducted for one community. So the thought of doing a regional BR&E has created some radical thinking amongst the OMAFRA community. And to that end, their support has been significant in making this project move forward. Our hope is that by conducting the survey in a regional partnership, each community benefits from the information required for internal development, but also receive information on overarching themes and goals for the region as a whole. And this has some significant impact, we believe, in terms of new entrepreneurs, because we believe that the analysis of this information will result in identified business opportunities. It really is, to use my limited knowledge of technology, a plug-and-play type of operation. If you can actually research that identifies what a business should be in a local agricultural community, it in turn allows you to suggest or attract youth or young entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general to a business that has a far greater chance of success as not. And so that's the approach we're taking in this particular pilot project. As I said, given the supports that are available, certainly once you create a business, there are enough supports to make the business go forward if you're willing to utilize those. What this does is also create the business need. So much like we have a tendency to enable our children and make every possible door open for them, Northumberland County is taking a very parental approach to suggest that we can maybe actually create businesses that people simply have to accept as being a reasonable chance of having success and go forward with those. It then just becomes a matter of promoting these opportunities to those who want to enter the entrepreneurial field. The other sort of key factor to note with this is that this is a regional approach, and in doing it as a regional approach, it has far greater implications in terms of the type of provincial support we've received. typically a BR&E for a community averages around $90,000, $90,000 to $100,000 in terms of its initiation. What we've tried to do under a regional umbrella is bring together the various counties, their resident CFDCs, and with the support of OMIF, which is the Ontario Marketing Investment Fund, we've gathered enough funding to move this project forward. If you're not familiar with the BR&E, each one of these surveys take approximately 2 hours. There are some 150 questions attached to each of these surveys, and when the survey is conducted, it's done face-to-face with 2 volunteers interviewing either the producer, the processor, or the end user. In order to operationalize this, each community, or in this case, each jurisdiction that we're dealing with from about the 9 partners, has been asked to put together a list of volunteers who we do training with in advance, and then the volunteers go out and do the interviews. So it has a very, very local flavor. It has a very, very specific bent in terms of local food. And we've hit the road running as of January. We have all the partners in line. Some of those partners are even sitting in this room, or were sitting in this room until I started speaking. No doubt they've seen enough of me. But the end result of this is a great deal of pickup from the agency that OMAFRA uses, which is Executive Pulse, which analyzes the information. And we really feel that, they really feel that this is the first time a regional BR&E has been undertaken. They're anticipating analyzing the results as quickly as possible. And so from that end, I guess by maybe taking a different tact on this, we're hoping to create businesses, create jobs, and in one or more ways link the region together. And if you start thinking of specialty foods or cheese or the gaps in those distribution chains or logistics or a number of other areas, this is one way to bring all of that together. And as I sat out there listening to the presentation regarding forestry, I would suggest that if this works for local food, this could also work for the forestry industry as well, because it would find out where the gaps are with a resident group who are the most informed as to where those gaps exist. In terms of total number of surveys, to make this statistically relevant, it's about 500 surveys. So we'll keep you posted. The results are for everyone's access, and we believe we'll create a number of business opportunities by going forward with this. So thank you very much.
Got to let Jeff start the countdown timer again. I don't have to wait. Okay. Thank you very much for the invitation today, and thanks for the introduction, Dan, to start off the panel. I wanted to comment on some themes based on my experience, not just with the Eastern Ontario Regional Network, but also as an entrepreneur. Back in 2002, I joined 3 23-year-olds to start up a software business, and we had about $400,000 in sales in year 1 and 3 employees. And when I sold my equity in 2009, it was about a $6 million company. It's still doing well, and they had about 60 employees. So I wanted to reflect on a few experiences from both the entrepreneurial side and from the side of the fence where we're now funding other entrepreneurs in the role that I have now. And I wanted to make comments around 3 themes: infrastructure, identity, and intelligence. To me, those are 3 themes that are essential to supporting entrepreneurship in our community. The first one around infrastructure directly relates to my current job with the Eastern Ontario Regional Network. So over the next 4 years, we have $170 million in private and public investment in high-speed broadband infrastructure. We have 3 goals. The first goal is 95% access to all of the residents of Eastern Ontario, about 1.2 million people, speed at 10 meg per second, and near urban pricing for all of those rural areas. And having the company that I owned as an entrepreneur was a software company, so high-speed internet is, I think, fundamental. It's an important piece of infrastructure. And Yolande and some of the others here know how challenging it is for government at various levels to understand and support new knowledge economy infrastructure. It's different than roads and bridges and schools, and there are a lot of challenges in getting it funded. But I think our project is going to well, I know it's going to be successful, and I think it's definitely going to set some new trends around that. Other examples of infrastructure are forums for entrepreneurs to meet. In Toronto, they have something called Sprout Up, where entrepreneurs come together along with venture capitalists and more mainstream people that are interested in entrepreneurship. And it can be really lonely as an entrepreneur. When you're starting up your business, you got a lot of questions, you face a lot of common issues. So opportunities are forums like this and other ones where entrepreneurs can come together and talk to each other. I'm going to make a controversial comment, and this is just my own opinion, but one of the infrastructure things that people tend to think about and look to government for is access to capital. It's a very common theme. I don't think government should have a role in providing access to capital. I think the programs that many of the ones that Dan has talked about are sufficient as they are. I've been through factoring contracts and borrowing money at 18% and extending your mortgage. And I think a lot of the risks that entrepreneurs face are the risks, the financial risks and the access to capital that they should take. I don't necessarily believe that governments need to have a role in that, but I'll be interested to hear your questions and responses to that. Identity. Just recently, a group of people in Eastern Ontario came together for Eastern Ontario Advisory Council, and they were talking about our identity as a region, and you might wonder, why do I think that's important for entrepreneurs? I think I was commenting to Dan that one of the things that I really realized in that discussion with a group of business people from around Eastern Ontario is that until you have an identity as a region and you decide what you want that identity to be, it's very hard to attract new people and to support and nurture that growth. And again, I'll give you a practical example. You're all here today to talk about fostering entrepreneurship. Well, when we started our software company back in 2002, and I'm not from Kingston, so I'll just qualify that, we didn't get a local client for the first 5 years of our business. It wasn't until we had HP reselling our software in Canada and the US, and we had multiple multi-million-dollar contracts in other jurisdictions that local people started to look at our company as being a successful company and wanting to support us, not by extending us capital, but actually buying our product. I think there can often be a bias against entrepreneurs, and if one of the things you want to do is support entrepreneurship, then I think we need to develop an identity as a region, and a part of that identity needs to be encouraging entrepreneurship. The last sort of theme that I wanted to comment on is intelligence, or providing business intelligence. One of the most challenging things, I think, as a startup company in the growth phase is getting access to market information, market analysis, competitive analysis. There's tons of data out there. Anybody that has access to a computer and can surf the web can access an enormous amount of information, but understanding how to use that information in a competitive way is really critical, and a lot of small businesses make the same mistakes without access to that data. In the industry that I was in previously, for the first 4 or 5 years, a lot of the business information intelligence that we needed to get, you had to pay for it at $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. There were analyst companies. We couldn't afford that. And I think that really delayed our growth as a company, because we didn't understand what our market was and what were some of the factors that we could differentiate ourselves against our competitors. I think one of the very common themes that I've heard from several colleagues of mine that have been entrepreneurs and starting businesses is how to scale the sales component of your business. So you start up the company, and the first thing you start thinking, you have a product or a service, and you want to hire salespeople, hire marketing people, and have them go out there and start scaling and selling and generating more revenue. And it takes a long time for the owners of the company to be able to quantify and pass on the value proposition that you have for your product or service. And one of the ways to do that is when you have the competitive intelligence that you need to understand what it is that you're selling in the context of the market. So I think finding opportunities to provide market intelligence to entrepreneurs would be really helpful for them. Not all markets have narrow vertical areas where you can get that kind of data, but where they exist or where there's new opportunities to create that data, I think it can be extremely helpful. So I think infrastructure, identity, developing an identity, promoting the identity, branding the identity, and I'm not suggesting that all of Eastern Ontario needs to be a giant hub of entrepreneurship, but whatever that identity is that emerges, I think entrepreneurship or encouraging entrepreneurs needs to be a piece of that. And then, again, just the last piece in terms of helping entrepreneurs get access to that business intelligence and teaching them or supporting them in an understanding of market analysis and competitive analysis. When we think of entrepreneurs, we tend to think, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the Blue Ocean strategy, and we tend to think of entrepreneurs as being the ones who are going to start the next Google or Apple or HP or something like that and create those new blue oceans where you reduce cost and increase value. But I think the vast majority of entrepreneurs are competing in red oceans, really competitive markets. Our software company, there were 100 vendors in our field. We own less than 1% of market share, and yet by a lot of different measures, we were pretty competitive and reasonably successful. And so getting them access to that business intelligence and recognizing that we're not all going to go to the NHL, not all entrepreneurs are going to become Google, so we need to understand how to compete in that red ocean. And those are just a few observations that I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
I'm going to very quickly tell you about my company known as Whistlestop Productions, a company that I run in partnership with my wife, Stacey. Whistlestop Productions has been around since 1989, and I'm proud to say we're one of the largest suppliers of independent television programming in Canada. You've probably never heard of us because we work out of a very small village. Initially, for the last 13 years, we've been working in Bloomfield, Ontario, and more recently in Picton, Ontario. Our programming, if you could please think of it as a product and not about TV, but think of it as a widget. The widget just happens to be on a piece of tape, and that piece of tape gets distributed across Canada. For instance, Motorcycle Experience has been on the air for 22 years on TSN. It's on Saturday mornings. It's on right now, so if you have a chance to go to TSN on Saturday morning, 11 a.m., please check out Motorcycle Experience. Thank you. Mystery cars, off limits, documentary series that are sold to 38 countries around the world. Other programming such as the Degree Poker Championship. We've done over 400 hours of independent programming for TSN alone, and maybe 60 or 70 hours of high definition documentary programming that's seen around the world. Started out as a very small production company, a company of one, which became a company of two in 1989, working out of a basement in Toronto. Entrepreneurial spirit that arose from working for maybe 5 years, 7 years corporately with companies like TSN, like Global Television. My partner, Stacey, her background was with Global Television, City TV, Life Channel, HGTV. What we do now is, after working in Toronto for many years, 13 years ago, thanks to computer technology and the internet, we were able to move our production company of two out to Prince Edward County, where everybody was convinced that we would deep six our business and fail. In fact, we tripled our business in the first year, and now I'm proud to say we work out of a building in Picton with a 6,000 square foot facility, an incubator upstairs, and a staff of 10. So the company has grown by leaps and bounds in the last 13 years. When we talk about entrepreneurs, I'm with David. I think I'm going to raise some eyebrows here. I just came from a class upstairs of some very brilliant and bright MBAs. And I have to say those people are going to do very well in the world. Will they be entrepreneurs? I'm not sure. Will they work at a big company somewhere and someday be a CEO or a CFO? Yes. Will they be running a small company in the rural environment? I'm not sure. I believe entrepreneurs generally are born. They're not made. I think they're born out of a general consensus that most entrepreneurs have a C average when they leave high school. They need to do something to survive. They're survivors. They're creative. They come up with a creative solution to survive. And they're not necessarily people that fit into bureaucratic roles and government environments very well. They like to react. They like to twist and turn, and they like to interact with people. They're usually people persons with ADD. And therefore, they're always thinking of new ideas and new ways to make money, and therefore they become very frustrated by infrastructure, and that's why they become entrepreneurs. So when it comes to dealing with government organizations, sometimes there's a real disconnect. They want to see people, and they want to deal with people on a daily basis. So I think when you're talking about rural entrepreneurs and helping them, I think you have to look at what is a rural entrepreneur and what are they doing. Two, I'm not necessarily sure that you need money to start a business. I didn't have any money when I started my business, and I'm talking about television production, which is a very expensive product. I think what happens is if you take an entrepreneur and you look at what an entrepreneur is, I think you realize that they have ideas that don't necessarily need money. And if they're a C student who came out of high school with a 55 average and they're looking to start a business, what they don't get is what everybody upstairs is getting. They don't get an education in how to run a business. So I think where the government could really help entrepreneurs, more than giving them money, which I think in many cases may waste or not use appropriately, what I would like to see the government get involved in is more mentorship programs. I was saying to the students upstairs just earlier, I probably wasted 15 years learning how to run my business through trial and terror. And if I had a mentor that had been there who had a business background, maybe someone who had just retired, someone who had 30 years of experience, meeting with me once a week or once a month and saying, Dave, look at this. Have you thought about that? What is your plan? I didn't even know what a business plan was for the first 15 years. That would have been very helpful. And from David's point of view, regional identity, number 3, and markets, absolutely yes. You have to identify an area. If you said to me right now today, Dave, where would you like to be running your business if you couldn't be in Prince Edward County, which by the way is the perfect place to be. If you had to have a second choice, where would you go? I say Austin. Without even thinking, I say Austin. Why Austin? Well, because that is the center of the creative rural economy in the United States right now. All the great creativity in terms of business is coming out of Austin, and it's been identified that way. And everybody looks to it that way. And if we identify Eastern Ontario or a region like Prince Edward County as being a creative rural economy, I think that would go a long way towards attracting other entrepreneurs to that area. And markets, when you talk about when you talk about a rural economy, I think one of the biggest mistakes young entrepreneurs make when they come to a rural environment is they think that rural environment, they think in terms of that being their market. And I see a lot of small businesses fail when they come to these markets and they say, well, I'm going to sell to the guy down the street or the person up the road. I think we really have to look at things in terms of what am I building here or what am I making or creating here, but how am I selling that or distributing that around the world? That's the key to success. Is the market isn't here, the market is across the pond. So we have to identify the final stage with 3 minutes to go, the internet. That internet allows us to speak to that world in a way that we've never been able to speak before. And it's so simple. It allows you to operate your business either in Prince Edward County or Austin, but it allows you to talk to somebody across the pond. Our distributor of our programming is in Amsterdam. Never met him. But we deal with that person on a weekly basis through the internet. The biggest barrier we have in Prince Edward County to dealing with that person in Amsterdam is the pipe. We need more infrastructure. We need a pipe. It's coming, man. And I've been there for 13 years waiting for that pipe. I can't wait another 13 years. So that's the biggest barrier I see right now is the pipe and the internet. And more entrepreneurs could move to Prince Edward County if we identified that as a creative rural economy and we had the internet to support that structure. They could deal with international markets and life would be perfect. I think I'm done. And by the way, with regards to the government, since I have 2 minutes, we have met somebody recently in the last couple of years from Pella CFDC, and that person identifies with what we're doing. and has been very supportive in what we're doing and has helped us create an incubator. I mentioned it very briefly that above our business, we're on the main floor with Whistlestop, but upstairs we have a creative incubator happening. And I can't say very much about that right now because there's an election going on. But I do have to say this. There is one person within our Pella CFDC that identifies what we're doing and has recognized that we are making a product. It may not be a pipe and it may not be a tire, but we are making a product. And that person has been very supportive. And yes, there have been some funds to create that incubator, but more than anything, there's been a lot of guidance and a lot of mentoring and a lot of intelligence and a lot of face-to-face time that has gone a long way to helping us create that incubator. And I think that's something that has to be recognized, face-to-face time. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. First, I want to thank Yolande and Jeff for inviting me. I was so excited when I got Jeff's email and I saw the list of sort of items that had been interesting, and one of them on there was business incubators and creating rural business incubators, which David just spoke about as well. And I've just finished a project on looking at incubators and mentorship within those incubators that I thought was a really great match for this. And because I'm excited about it, it's going to be really hard to talk about in 9 minutes, but I'll do my best. And I hadn't counted on integrating comments from the other panelists as well, so that's going to make it even a little bit faster. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with the assumption. I put a couple of slides up here up front, which I know you have in your packets, and the idea was these were more slides for you to take away with some statistics about incubators. The numbers for rural are really down. They've gone up a lot. This is from 2006. We have a doctoral student, Ren, who is at the back, Montgomery, who is working on the diffusion of rural incubators in Ontario, and we know that there have been a number in Prince Edward County and other places that have sprouted up recently. What I'm going to talk about is sort of what incubators offer, and this is mentorship programs as well. A lot of the economic development offer a flavor of this, and I think that what we're saying here is applicable not only to incubators, in the case we looked at a high-tech incubator in Silicon Valley, but other areas as well. And you can kind of pick and choose these to more broadly in terms of mentorship relationships and really supporting the entrepreneurs, which we saw. So 4 general sort of things that we see in incubators. We see mentoring, which both the Davids talked about. It's really nice. I can just kind of say both the Davids and capture you both there. Also brokering. So really more and more what we see are the staff of these incubators, of economic development corporations, of CFDCs, of enterprise facilitation. I mean, I sit on the board in Kingston, so I know that's the whole role of the enterprise facilitator, is trying to connect people with other resources, be it funding, be it someone who can help them in terms of getting customers, suppliers, etc. There's also this source of legitimacy that we talk about. So we get these comments of, nothing changed about my business, but all of a sudden I went from being in a living room to having an office. And it's a lot easier to interview potential employees in an office than it is in my living room. So there's this sense of legitimation that comes, or this, just simply being affiliated with an incubator or perhaps one of these other economic development programs. And then lastly is just the sharing of overhead costs. Being able to rent a desk as opposed to having to go out and rent a whole office is going to save you. Being able to share in these rural communities, having the access to broadband in an incubator that you may not have at your home as well are other options. So, all sounds wonderful and great, but there are some challenges. And what we looked at, and this is work that I'm doing with a co-author of mine who is at the University of Oxford, Victor Seidel, and we were classmates a number of years ago, is, and I think all of the entrepreneurs here will tell you, why did you become an entrepreneur? You said independence. I want to be my own boss. I value my autonomy. So you've got these people who are fiercely, autonomous, independent, and there's this paradox, right? Because on the other hand, you in turn find out, you actually may be more dependent on others for access of resources than if you were an employee in a company. because you have all of these people that you need to talk to, be it your suppliers, your customers, you get some financing from the bank and all of a sudden are subject to their terms. And so you have to be able to manage these two sort of competing forces. And what we saw is this plays out a lot in mentorship relationships. So what we did is we thought an incubator would be a great place to study this because they're set up specifically for looking at mentorship and providing support and resources to an entrepreneur. And so how are entrepreneurs able to take that advice, take that support, and still manage the sense of independence? So we did a field study a number of years ago. This is when we were both graduate students out in Silicon Valley, and we just kind of hung out at the incubator over 6 months a number of times, interviewed a number of entrepreneurs as well as incubator directors, went through all of the emails that the incubator director was sending out. It was a high technology incubator. It was sponsored by a reputable mid-sized venture capital firm. So it was a for-profit incubator, which is a minority in terms of sort of the display. 94% of them are nonprofit. So it was a little different that way. But like I said, I think the lessons are broadly applicable. So we found out the entrepreneurs did love all those things. They loved the mentoring, they loved this, but it wasn't without its challenges. And what we saw two real tensions kind of emerging, and we think that these are valuable for people to be aware of when they're in the role of trying to support entrepreneurs. So the first tension that we saw is what we're calling a role-based tension. So there's the idea of, you have it in your head, an entrepreneur. What is an entrepreneur supposed to do? And you'd think having a mentor who was a sort of all-knowing generalist expert is what we call it. We haven't thought of a better term yet. Who could provide you advice would be great. But if they started to kind of step onto your toes and maybe tell you a little bit how you should be running your business, some conflict emerged there. And so we saw some strategies that both the mentors and the entrepreneurs adopted so that toe-stepping wouldn't happen. And the other was this affiliation-based tendency, because in the beginning it was great, all that legitimacy that I was telling you about, being affiliated with that, bringing that sort of instant status. But once they became established, they didn't want people to think they had help along the way. They wanted to be these independent, I created this business and not have to play up. At the same time, the incubator or the Economic Development Corporation, what have you, CFDC, wants to be able to tell their success stories, because they have a reputation as well to maintain. And they're wanting to tell those success stories at the same time that the founder is trying to pull away from their affiliation. So what did they do? Well, we identified 6 tactics. The first 3 that are on the list, I'm going to spend my remaining 3 minutes talking about these. The first 3 are specific to sort of the dyadic mentor relationship. The next 2 are about peer, so I thought it was great, David, that you brought up this peer and this sprout, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And the last is about that affiliation piece. So what about the mentor relationship? Well, we found that it was most successful in observing these interactions that were most productive, sort of really came out with a good solution, were when they were issue-specific, and when it was the entrepreneur who was coming to the advisor. So it might be saying, hey, you know what? I have these 3 suppliers I'm trying to decide between. What are some of the things that I should be thinking about? Or, I have this difficult customer that I need to write a cover letter to. What is it that I need to go into it? And they would actually sit down and work through those issues with the entrepreneur. But it was very specific. The other thing that they did is they had a whole cadre of experts. And again, this is the Enterprise Facilitation Board, right? You've got this sort of experts behind. And they would call those in as needed. So there was a question about, would a bank loan be appropriate? The mentor probably knew the answer to that. The answer was no, it was not appropriate. It was quite obvious. But instead of saying that, he brought in the finance guy who happened to be there. He called in the finance person. Because that's doing 2 things. One, the entrepreneur is not dependent on only one individual for advice, so there's not that sort of sense of heightened dependency there. But also it's sending a message to the entrepreneur that you don't have to be an expert in everything. And also these subject matter experts, their roles are very clear. So they're not stepping on their toes because they're recognized, this is the finance expert. Or here's the tech guy who's the expert, and he can tell us about leasing contracts because he's done it himself before in the past. So bringing those experts in. And then the third thing that they did was and this was very explicitly done, it was done by a number of the directors, but they would say, okay, you know what? You've heard all these great things, we've talked about this, so there was a lot of debate and conversation within the process of the engagement, but at the end they would always say, now you're the entrepreneur. You decide. So really emphasizing, vocally emphasizing, here are the rules and here are our roles. You're the entrepreneur. It's your final call. The next two, in my minute left, I will go through these. The entrepreneurs really wanted to, and this is David's point about Sprout and peer, they really wanted to learn from their peers. So they really encouraged to have brown bags, to get together with their other peers. I think this had two, and they would make their performance visible to one another, which you would kind of think was surprising. Maybe they would want to hide, but the director came up with this like stoplight kind of system where he had milestones. He'd give them a red light, a green light, yellow light, and he'd post them up, and they would post them up so they could see where one another was doing. And that did two things. One, think about this forum today. When you're in a group situation, I may be telling you, here are the 6 things that you should go back and implement, but you're taking notes, you're absorbing it, you're integrating, and then you feel like you're owning your solution. So whatever you take away from today and you apply is kind of a mixture of everything, and you're not directly accountable to me in a dyadic relation where you might feel, well, I don't follow all these things. Kelley's going to feel like I'm not listening to her or taking her seriously, but I won't know. So that's what the peer network was doing for them. It was a way for them to share stories, but in a way that wasn't accountable. And the other was it took away the mentor as always being the gatekeeper. The last, because I'm out of time, was people were able to affiliate sort of independently. So there was no contract when they joined the incubator that said, you must mention the incubator in everything that you do, or you must thank the incubator in everything you do. But they recognized at the same time that the incubator could recognize them. So you would have press releases or press materials going out from the founding company, makes no mention of the incubator. At the same time, then if you would turn to the incubator's website, or their press releases, they would be playing up those affiliations. And so they allowed those two to sort of coexist and independently choose when it was best to affiliate. So thank you very much. We're starting another project on mentoring with surveys. So if you want to know more, my email address is at the beginning. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jeff and Yolande, for inviting me to speak today. This is actually, I kind of like going last because I can incorporate what everybody has been talking about today as Jeff pulls up the slides. I'm excited because enterprise facilitation is a fairly new project in eastern part of Canada. And I'm going to quickly run through, now I know how everybody feels, we'll run through it as quick as possible here and talk about what enterprise facilitation is and how it helps businesses locally. So basically, it is based on the Ciroli method, enterprise facilitation, and I know that we're here talking about Hastings County today, but we are also have an enterprise facilitator in Kingston, Tracy Snow, who's here today in Lennox and Addington. And then we also have the Small Business Centre represented by Lisa Price that's involved with enterprise facilitation. And then we also have another enterprise facilitator in Prince Edward County. So there's a few of us that started way back in 2009. How does enterprise facilitation work? Well, essentially what it does is it works at the community level at a grassroots approach for economic development, and we work with the passion of that individual. So a lot of what you guys touched on, passion and the incubator and the mentoring process, that's tied into enterprise facilitation. So really it's like business coaching, but without the advising. What we do is we facilitate the process with bringing the experts to the business to help facilitate their sustainable growth. And we're also supported by a community resource board. So every enterprise facilitator has a resource board that they can access. And usually it's about upwards to 50 people that are within that resource board. And those people actually help support the businesses through us. So the difference between existing models and enterprise facilitation is we're really accessible. We are on the road all the time at the business, at their place of business, or we can either meet them at a coffee shop, wherever is convenient for them. So they're not coming to an office to talk to us when they should be actually at their business, because in rural communities there's usually only one or two people that own the business, and so we actually go to them. So we're very approachable, very accessible, and we're available for them at their convenience. We also offer the community support. So we're kind of the linkage between, for the business person, between the experts, the mentors, and we kind of facilitate that process to connect the dots for them. And then we also deal with the sustainability of the business. So we're with them long-term, or they may just come to us and look for us for one or two answers to their questions or some support for help. And what we do is we talk about what's called the Trinity of Management. And basically, those are three things. We're back to threes here. But so for any business to be sustainable, we talk about three things with the entrepreneur. And this is just the basic level, and then we kind of go through the process with them from there. So we say you need a strong product, strong marketing, and strong financial management. So the passion of that entrepreneur may be just the product. That's why they got into the business, because they love what they're doing. But they may not have the team to support marketing and getting that business and the word out there for their business. So what we do is do an assessment of the company, and then we help them fill that gap by bringing in the experts and people that can either mentor, somebody as a consultant that they may choose to pay for that service. So we're just connecting the dots for them and helping them create a company that's more sustainable. So the role of enterprise facilitator, basically we provide free and confidential service to individuals. So we are paid service by the municipality. So being an entrepreneur myself, and also being on the government side, I'm not sure where that puts me, but in a very unique position to kind of offer that support for the entrepreneurs and really understand where they're coming from. So obviously we have to be, great networkers, getting out there in the community. I think in the first 3 months I met over 400 people, and that was just connections that I used for resources for the clients or people that I just explained the program to, just to kind of build that momentum and get the community excited about the program. Because basically if the people don't know about the program, then it's a done deal. And we're not actually the ones that are supposed to promote the program. It's actually the resource board members. So it was a real interesting challenge, but we did it and got the word out to 14 municipalities, which is what I'm responsible for. So we facilitate and we don't advise is the other portion. We're bringing in the experts. We understand what we're looking at in terms of the business plans or the lack thereof. And what we do is we connect them with the right people to help them fill whatever gap is needed. So if the business is actually an existing business, what we do is what we call a total quality index. So we look at what's existing, what the gaps are for that business, and then we go from there. So we measure, again, the strengths and weaknesses of the businesses and help them fulfill the gaps. Again, this is talking about the resource board. We're looking at approximately 50 people. I know Kingston, being a bigger area, I believe they have 50 people on their resource board. We have about 30, and I know Lennox and Addington is around that mark, between 20 to 30 as well. So those people are there every month to support us, to make sure that we're on track with the clients that need some assistance as a sounding board for us. And also we have people that are within the board that actually help mentor some of the clients. So it's all about having the right people in the right seats. So our resource boards are very important and we value them, and I thank a couple of the people that are here today that are in my resource board. It's really good to have that support and to know that they're not only helping me, but the main goal is to help the businesses, because if the more people we have accessible to us, the better. So basically they introduce us to potential clients and they help spread the word about the project. So some of the goals were, short-term goals, were for us to, it started out with the 3 areas, Prince Edward County, Hastings County, and Kingston. Our short-term goals was to achieve about 100 new businesses across the 3 sites, 200 new jobs, $1 million in investment. And then the long-term goal was to develop a methodical system for business support that would be regional and a provincial standard developed. So what's happening in Hastings County is our program began in 2009. We've had over 563 introductions, over $303,000 that has been invested capital, with, of course, spin-offs from there. Dollars from those businesses have gone into supporting consultants to help help them with their business. So those are the intangible numbers that we can't calculate, but definitely 303,000 invested. 92 businesses are in our program in Hastings County, and if you think about the 14 municipalities and the span of that from Deseronto to the south end of Algonquin Park, and us getting the word out in each of those rural communities, we are pretty proud of that number. As a starting block out of the gate here, it's been with the hours and on the road and the driving, it's been interesting. And I know Lennox and Addington has the same geographical area to cover, so it's been a challenge, but it's been really well worth it. We have been giving 533 direct assistance, so different types of assistance to those businesses. So where we are now, we have created the relationships with the 14 municipalities, developed relationships with Indian and Northern Affairs, Kijita Meekum, Aboriginal Bank of Canada, and because we actually do some work on the reserve, and we were invited. And I think that's a big accomplishment for Hastings County to actually have developed that relationship with the Mohawks Bay of Quinte, and the band and the chief has welcomed me into their territory. And we've also helped link clients with OMAFRA, CFDC, and Trenval, and again, the Aboriginal Bank of Canada, or Development Bank, and also investors as well. So basically what we're talking about is the passion of the entrepreneur, and I wanted to put up a couple of slides just so you can kind of tap into the reality of what this program and what this type of mentorship does for people. This is Granny Crete at their 1-year anniversary, and on the right-hand side here, the picture, hopefully you can see that, there's a consultant, there's the CAO of the band, there's the economic development officer, there's the businesses, there's employment and staffing from the band, and all of these people were at the table assisting that one business. So that's quite a feat to get everybody in the room assisting that businesses, and they have moved on to get a significant amount of funding, and which can add to their expansion, and obviously more jobs being brought to the community. And then the final client, Mindful Journey. She's a Reiki master up in Marmara. And again, you see the Reeves, the chair of our resource board, a consultant, counselors, all coming to the table. And it doesn't just, okay, you do a celebration and it stops. This is a continuation. I want you to understand that it's not just that one day and then we launch and then the business is left on their own. They can work with us as long as we have this program going, and a lot of them do, and some of them, come and see us, and then, months later they come back and use our service again. So valuable program in this area, and hope you will help spread the word. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, now it's your opportunity to ask questions, and I'd welcome your comments, your questions, and it's your voice that we want to hear.
Hi, my name's Sheila MacDonald, and I run an organization called Ellerin. And I'm struck by the comments that have been made by the panel. And I don't have any questions for you, I just have a couple of comments. First of all, on market intelligence, which I think, David Fell, you were the one that raised that. Through Ellerin, we have access to some significant market intelligence reports that can cost anywhere up to $50,000. They're focused on the sort of medical field, clean tech, ICT. So and there are 14 organizations like mine around the province. So I'm sure wherever you come from, there'll be a regional innovation center that can assist you. So you just have to remember ellerin.ca and contact me, and I'd be happy to put you in touch with that kind of resource. The other thing that we offer is the mentorship that you talked about. So I have on my staff now, 2 people which we're calling business advisors. The ministry likes to call them entrepreneurs in residence. So they have been entrepreneurs at some point in their lives. They've got the scars, they've got the bruises, and so they understand what it's like to be at the other side of the table. So we have those people available for, and we work with the client. We will stay alongside the client until they have accomplished what they want to accomplish. So I just wanted to make that comment, and I look forward to hearing from anybody who wants to access that. Thanks, Yolanda.
Thanks very much, Sheila. And those $50,000 reports are free? Wonderful. Actually, on the note of business intelligence, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask Dan to talk about an effort in Eastern Ontario to create some data that might assist entrepreneurs in making their market choices and product choices. So Dan, tell us a little bit about Vibe, please.
Certainly. What Yolanda is referring to is something that's being termed Vibe, which is Virtual Business East. The intent and the business plan has just been completed and was supported through the regional efforts of the Eastern Ontario Development Program, was to, or rather through the Ministry of, through the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade, regarding the creation of a resource which might best be described as providing research analysis to startup businesses and to new businesses, also an assist to economic development agencies throughout Eastern Ontario. Still in the early stages. With the completion of the plan, there are some challenges attached to governance and an initial advisory panel, and who will be the recipient of said information and the distributor of said information. But we've got the initial plan mapped out, and I'm hoping that will be released very, very shortly. So once again, we're trying to link to some of the technological advances that have come across through Eastern Ontario. The analogy we keep using is that we have track, we need trains to put on the track.
Excellent. Other questions?
Hi, I'm Robert Haller from Tay Valley Township. I wanted to ask David if you can tell us, what are you incubating up there? And is that your own profitable enterprise, or is this something you're doing out of generosity, or is it funded elsewhere? Because we looked at a couple models of those incubators.
Hello? I'm not sure how much I can tell you about it. We're incubating a like-minded product. The incubator is a not-for-profit and has been established as a not-for-profit. I can tell you all I can tell you is it's a very similar product to what we're creating downstairs, and the idea is being closely related to this incubator upstairs. It allows us to offer mentorship to the people that are upstairs in the incubator and foster some development and relationships for them. The goals of this particular incubator is to promote creative collaboration and business growth within the region. It's to promote community revitalization, job creation, and some long-term business growth, and promote education and training. So without giving it away, it exists. There is a not-for-profit. There is a tenant that will be moving into this building space at the end of this month. And there will be a lot of collaboration between upstairs and downstairs, mentorship between upstairs and downstairs, and hopefully fostering a whole pile of business for the people that are upstairs. What it brings to the party for Whistlestop Productions selfishly is that it will be training a whole batch of people with some skill sets that we desperately need downstairs. So it should be a win-win for everybody.
Excellent comment. We have with us others who are in charge of incubators, both locally and more distantly. If you're associated with an incubator, could you please raise your hand? Fantastic. What about describing another incubator in your county? This is Craig Desjardins, who will be speaking shortly.
Thank you very much, Yolanda. We've been very fortunate. We're working on our third incubator at the moment. Actually, I can't even talk about the most recent one either because of the current federal election, but I will say our very first incubator is a social incubator, and it actually, Pella CFDC is the lead tenant. One thing we identified in our community was the fact that a number of organizations were involved in economic development activity, but really didn't realize that they were. Groups like the Arts Council, other organizations that actually contribute a great deal to the social aspect of our community. But we're operating very informally out of somebody's kitchen or basement. Oftentimes when the treasurer position changed, the boxes moved from one person's house to the next person's. And what we identified was that by sharing a collaborative space, by sharing boardrooms, by having independent offices where you have a professional setting, that there could be an opportunity to increase the capacity of organizations. I'm very pleased to say we have 12 organizations in our facility. Some take 3 days a week, 2 days a week. Some have the space all month long. And it's a very rewarding experience and something I think is really adding great value to our community.
Thank you. Other questions, please? And I have one, and that's because David Fell, you raised a very provocative comment. That was the role of government and whether or not entrepreneurs should be dependent on government grants and loans and the extent to which it might actually conflict with the entrepreneurial spirit. And I wanted to pursue that a little bit and to also ask, is there anyone in the audience who either agrees or strongly disagrees? All right, just a couple of comments and then you get the last word, okay? So it'll be fair.
I don't know if you want to word it as strongly, but I'm an entrepreneur and I've had to turn to CFDC twice for loans, not because of any business mistakes, but because my business was growing so fast. And I'm a new immigrant to Canada, so the Toronto Dominion Bank, which has tons of my money, wouldn't loan me anymore, even though I have a great FICO score in the States. It didn't do me any good here. So CFDC twice in the past 6 years has really provided me the opportunity to, I've actually tripled the size of my business in those 6 years. So in that instance, the government funding was a big help to me.
Hold it. Hold the thought, David.
I guess I can't resist in asking you a question. Your present role, not as an entrepreneur, but as a leader of the network, is controlling approximately $110 million of government money to create the infrastructure to create entrepreneurship. So your comment about how government shouldn't be involved, I guess, doesn't really make sense within that context. So perhaps you could explain yourself. In a non-confrontational way, of course.
That, of course, was a very friendly comment, and it was, you know, Craig. Any other comments before we let David explain, because I know his explanation is very, very good. David did not tell you that. Oh, one other comment.
I'm also with the CFDC, and I think the point to make is that it's not a grant that you get from CFDC. We have almost a $10 million portfolio of loans out into the community in North and Central Hastings and South Algonquin. And when that money goes out, it comes back at $100,000 a month to go back into the loan portfolio to be loaned out to other people. So it's not like we're giving them money, we're actually loaning the money because they can't get it from traditional institutions.
One other comment. See the hornet's nest? Okay, Gay.
I just, also from a CFDC, I'd just like to point out that CFDCs are not the government.
Okay, David, your response.
Okay, thank you for those questions and for pointing out that inconsistency. Perhaps I didn't follow my notes quite closely enough, but what I had written down here is that the current programs like BDC, and there are a number of different programs to provide capital at different stages of growth, are sufficient. Often when I go out to trade shows or talk to other entrepreneurs, there's a theme in Canada about lack of access to capital to support growth. And I think we have a lot of good risk-based, reasonably risk-based, targeted programs to support certain stages of startup and entrepreneurship. There's often a lot of criticism around, and if you take, I finished my MBA last year at Queen's, and I'm trying to remember when it was, but Elspeth Murray, who's Associate Dean now, was teaching our entrepreneur course, and there's one of the most successful venture capitalists in Canada comes in and talks to the course, and every year he would come in and, yeah, thank you. I have a really bad memory. And he kicked off our lecture, which was in, I want to say in early 2009, and walked into the class, and he'd been doing this class for about 10 years or something like that, and said, the venture market in Canada is dead. There is no money, forget it. And that's the way, because it was the middle of the recession and things were quite bad. And so what I wanted to suggest is that the current types of funding programs are appropriate for the role that they fill, and we borrowed money as well from various, but I don't think government should get involved in trying to fill that other gap, which is taking some of those entrepreneurial startup companies from where they are to either IPO or sales or whatever. I think the private sector needs to come in and fill that particular gap. And then, so that's what I meant to say. Perhaps I didn't say it as clearly. And then to answer the other question about my current role, yes, we have 110 million in government funding, and it's a private-public partnership. It's a unique business model, and the role that we're filling now is a role to fill what I call market failure. So there's, again, a lot of faculty who can spend more time talking about how do you define or identify market failure, but in essence, if the government hadn't gotten involved based on the return on investment and the requirements for capital, high-speed broadband wouldn't have happened for 15 years because the population density and the capital investment is simply not there. So there are circumstances where in market failure, where infrastructure is required, that I think government does have a role to play with the private sector. But these business models like our private-public partnership are really new. We're learning as we go. The government's learning as they go, and the private sector is learning as they go as well. So, good question.
We have time just for one more question. Is this a related comment or question?
Will the broadband network also increase cellular use all across Ontario? Is it strictly for internet?
Satellite? Was that it?
Cellular. Phones.
Cellular. No, it's exclusively for broadband. I believe that the sense right now is that the private sector will fill those gaps as required.
Right, so it's a public-private partnership, big middle P. Okay, I have just one final comment or question. I wanted to highlight the fact that, David Hatch, you said that often the schools, like this distinguished one, don't produce entrepreneurs. They produce, these huge bankers and these
titans of industry.
Indeed, and yet David Fell just confessed that he is a product of our school. And I wanted just to let Kelley speak about entrepreneurship. Are you also, David?
What?
Are you affiliated too? I know that you taught today in a class, so you are culpable. But if Kelley, you can just speak about the role of entrepreneurship in a school like the School of Business. To what extent is entrepreneurship something that we actively teach or are concerned about? And we'll close there.
Oh, I got the last remark. Can everyone hear me? Good. Well, I think that's twofold. I think there is a certain, I say to everyone, because I get students, I teach the entrepreneurship class, and I often will get that question on the opening day, are entrepreneurs just born? Why are we here? And I say, it's like someone who's a musician. There are people who will excel at it, there are people who won't, but everyone can have appreciation of it and through practice can improve and get better. But not everyone is going to make their living being a musician, not everyone's going to like it. Not everyone's going to make their living being an accountant. or like being an accountant. So it's not as if we're going to produce every single person out the door becoming an entrepreneur, but I think we can foster that, and for people who have that sort of innate sense in them, and maybe not have had it leashed. But actually, I will say in defense of David, there is something to be said about, and I tell my classes this too, that a lot of times by the time they get an MBA there, it's so structured that they won't be an entrepreneur. And the people that we are often people who've come in, and David, I think you would fall in this category. You came in as an entrepreneur and are looking to then get that sort of business side and skills and then go back out and be an entrepreneur. So a lot of times at the MBA level, the ones who leave as an entrepreneur are coming to get that skill set specifically for that purpose. So I think that people can be encouraged and learned, but I don't think it's something for everyone, as any other profession is.
Great. Can we please thank this wonderful panel? Thank you.